Hi everyone, it's Kieran with Thrifted Living. So for today's video, I would like to share with you how you can make this wire storage bin organizer using products from Dollar Tree. I am so excited to be sharing this project with you all today. I actually got some inspiration for this project from one of my colleagues' classrooms. I actually saw one of these wire organizers in her room and I thought to myself, I think I can make this with Dollar Tree products. For this project, you will need a lot of the wire cooling racks from Dollar Tree. You will also need some zip ties and also some of those fabric storage bins. I counted how many wire cooling racks that I used in my final piece, and I think that I used about 11 of these packs. They come two to a pack, but the more you have, the bigger your organizer can be. It's totally up to you. So to start this project, I sort of started by standing all of the different wire racks next to each other just to see how tall the piece would actually be. And if you saw the video that I did where I shared a happy planner organizer made with wire cooling racks from Dollar Tree, you can see that it's sort of hard when the piece is first starting, only because it doesn't have much structure at all. But I promise the further you get into the project, the easier it actually gets because it sort of becomes a little more stable. But pretty much what I was doing was just checking to make sure that these organizers would fit inside of the space that I was creating. I then started taking my zip ties and attaching the different pieces together. I tried to attach at the corners just because it gave it more strength, and I also would sometimes lay it flat so that I could just get the two pieces together and then I would stand it up once I put it back on it. As I said, it is a bit of a struggle at the beginning just because the piece doesn't have much structure at all, but I promise once you get a little further into the project, it does get a little bit easier. I also tried to make sure that the zip ties were as tight as I could make them just because it gave more strength to the piece. And if you see me putting a poster board behind the piece occasionally, it's because I felt like you guys might not be able to see it very clearly on the carpet. So if you see the poster board randomly, it's just because I wanted to make sure that you guys could see. So as you can see, I have more pieces finally put together and it's making it a little bit easier to structure it. I just tried to attach as many corner pieces as I can. Occasionally I would put a zip tie in the middle just to give it extra strength, but that was usually more toward the end when I had more pieces all together. So as you can see, I have zip ties in all four corners along the bottom, and I also have two along the top. Now I'm attaching the first shelf, and as I said, I know I keep on saying it, but when you first start attaching a new piece, it is kind of hard just because it doesn't have a lot of other areas to support it. So I try to do almost like opposite sides, and so here I'm attaching it on all four corners of the piece. I just want to make sure that it is really strong and stable, and as I said, I also try to keep the zip ties as tight as I can. One thing I did experience was wanting to put a ton of zip ties on, and I didn't want to add too many just because it will bulk up the piece a bit and you really don't need a ton. So I tried to make sure that I hit all of the different corners and then any parts that were connecting just to make sure that they were extra secure. I then also put a couple of these collapsible bins in just to see how they look and to make sure that they were fitting. And honestly, it's a little motivating too, just to see your progress throughout the whole process of making a new project. Also, in my last video that I shared when I used these wire cooling racks, I shared that I didn't go through and cut off all of the extra parts of the zip ties. So for this project, I'm making sure that I did do that because it almost became this like crazy spider porcupine creature towards the end. Now I am starting on the next layer of the project. Something that I would like to mention about how you set up these cooling racks is that you really need to make sure that the little bottom feet, I don't know if you can see them right there on the rack, they have almost these little feet that stick out on the bottom just so that the cooling rack isn't sitting directly on the counter. Make sure that those are facing down toward the bottom when you are applying the different layers and the different like shelves in the piece, because if you don't, then when you try to put the actual collapsible bin in, it will get stuck on that. So make sure that you have the feet facing down. I also attached another layer to the back, again just making sure that it was secured to the piece that was below it and to the two pieces that were on either side of it. And now I am just attaching the next shelf. This just gets so exciting to me at this point because it really started to come together, and I knew that I still had a lot to do, but I could really start seeing the piece come together. And of course I put another bin on just so I could see how it looks. Now I am trying to figure out how to attach the final layer. I thought maybe I could do a fourth layer, but then I decided that I thought 3 was a pretty good height. And I then realized how easy it is to bend these cooling racks. So what I decided to do was to actually take the piece, take 2 separate different cooling racks and bend them to make the final 3rd layer. I also took them and stood them next to each other just to make sure that it was a good fit. Then I started attaching those pieces one at a time. Now that I'm thinking about it, I could have attached them together on the floor and maybe that would have been easier to attach them on the actual piece, but I think what I actually ended up doing was actually doing one on each corner in the front and then attaching the pieces together on the top and then going through and adding extra support in the back as well. So I really like how this turned out and I was really surprised as to how easy it was to bend them. It sort of makes me think of different projects that I can do in the future. So I'm just going through and attaching those and putting in the final piece. It looks so great. I just love how this project turned out. Now I'm adding a piece to the back. You actually really don't have to do this if maybe you're going to have this up against a wall, but I thought that it just gave it more of a finished look. And right here you can actually see that I'm taking zip ties but I'm not fully tightening them. This is something I started doing later in the project just so that I could get the structure of the piece without having to worry that things were super tight and if I didn't like it, you know, having to cut the entire zip tie apart. So there you can see it's like the first column of this organizer and I just love how it turned out. Now I'm going to start working on the second column, and the only difference really with this is that you're going to be attaching it to the entire first column. So all of those areas where you needed to make connections on the first column, the bottom, the sides, the different shelves, you're going to also attach the one side of the next column to that part. So as you work through the process of this project, you're going to see that certain areas have a lot of zip ties pretty close to each other and other areas might not have as many. The cooling racks also have a lot of points of strength on them, for example right in the middle or along the different wires where you have like a cross section almost. So I tried to make sure that I was attaching the zip ties to areas where there was more strength. For example, right in the middle of the cooling rack there is that wire that might be a little stronger than the rest. I tried to make sure that I was attaching the zip ties to those locations. I don't know if what I'm trying to say is making any sense, but pretty much I'm trying to say don't just try to attach it to the middle of a wire. Try to make sure that there is another cross angle. I know there's probably a technical word for it. Try to make sure that what you're attaching to is almost at an opposite angle of the piece that you want to attach. So for this shelf, there's that strong middle piece right in the middle. I am making sure to take my zip ties and attach the shelf to that piece. If I was just attaching it to the vertical pieces, it would just slide right up and down. So maybe that's what I'm trying to say. Try to make sure that if you're laying something horizontal, that you find a horizontal point of attachment. Wow, I'm trying really hard to make sense of this, but I don't know if I'm fully expressing exactly what I'm trying to say. So right now I'm just going to be repeating the process for the different columns that I'm creating for this piece. So I'm just going to let you guys watch the whole process of that, and then I will check back in when we're done so I can share with you the final piece. And here it is, a Dollar Tree wire organizer for these collapsible storage bins. I absolutely love how this turned out. You can use this in so many different ways. Here I'm actually organizing some yarn, so maybe you use this in your craft room. I also have organized some Happy Planner stickers in here as well. If you enjoyed this Dollar Tree DIY, make sure that you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to check out my blog at thriftedlivingblog.com. Please follow me on Instagram at thriftedliving, and if you don't have an Instagram but would like to stay up to date with what I'm doing, you can follow me on Facebook at thriftedliving page. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!